Welcome back to another episode of NFL News on the Boomer Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today we've completed 3 weeks of the NFL season, and I didn't get a chance to do a recap last week, but I wanted to make sure I had a chance to do it this week. I know Thursday night has happened, so week 4 has started, but we've finished 3 weeks already, and I wanted to just go through and talk about some of the things that stand out to me. As I did last time, we're going to do headlines, overrated, underrated, and surprises. So we're going to start off with the headline. Right now, there's no bigger headline than Dallas losing to Arizona. Definitely would probably be in my surprises category, but it's the main news right now. So with Dallas losing to Arizona, here's the thing. I said the last time I did this that Dallas defense was overrated. Now, does that mean Dallas defense is not good? No, I'm not saying that. Does this loss to the Cardinals mean that they're not good or anything? No, I'm not saying that. But what I said is that Dallas and New York, this was after week 1, they did not play great O-lines. So for whatever reason, the Giants just have a terrible unit. Andrew Thomas has grown really great. Their rookie center has been doing really well. But the rest of the unit, or as a whole unit, they just have been very bad in pass pro for a long time. And so that offensive line wasn't going to show you really any, competition. And then they went and played after they played New York. Then they played who did they play in week 2 that they beat? They beat the Jets. And the Jets, as everyone has been talking about, has one of the worst offensive lines, which was the first conversation when Aaron Rodgers was the QB. But as soon as he went down and Zach became the QB, people don't talk about it anymore. Zach's behind that O-line that everybody said was horrible, and the Jets played that O-line that everybody said was horrible, and they dominated them. So for those simple facts, I was like, we have to obviously see them against a good offense, but mainly a good offensive line. And the Cardinals, again, this probably would be in my surprises as well, or my underrated. The Cardinals O-line is really good. Now, if you listen to me and my draft material, you know that Paris Johnson was my number 1 tackle. And he went to the Cardinals. They got him at right tackle instead of left. That's fine. He played that too. And he looks great. Or at least he looked great against Dallas. I have not watched either of their games, to be honest. Obviously, we've seen that they should be 2-0 going into Dallas, but they end up losing those games, but they've been competitive. So I put them as a surprise. Them and the Rams, they've been scrapping. So I haven't seen those games, but I saw him against Dallas. I saw him go one-on-one with Parsons and everything, and he looks great. For a rookie, he looks great. And as a Bears fan who has another rookie tackle who I love too as a prospect, but he's struggling a lot, and Paris looks right at home. So Paris is doing great, and that O-line as a unit is a lot better than people gave it credit for. And so, some people are going to say that they didn't take the Cardinals seriously. Some people are going to say the Trayvon Diggs injury changed everything. Trayvon Diggs could have been out there. That does not change 200 yards rushing. It does not change anything, because really Trayvon Diggs is a big play opportunity guy. And, he could cover. I'm not going to say he can't. But I don't think that makes the difference. We've seen elite corners out there while a defense got shredded. People going to look for those excuses, but I told you after week 1, the defense was overrated in the sense that we have to see them against comp. Now, Cardinals is not who I would have picked, but for them to perform that way against the Cardinals, and again, I know we keep saying it and it feels disrespectful. I don't want to be, but the Cardinals is just not an offense that we would say is high octane. Even what they've been able to do, it's been mostly running the ball and pressuring the quarterback that the Cardinals have been doing. So even still, their offense hasn't been high octane. So to see what Dallas did against them, it makes you think, what are you going to do against Philly, who has the best O-line in the league? So we'll see. And again, I don't think the story is written, but that's the headline now. Dallas lost. Why they lose? Is it over? Again, this would probably be overrated to me to say that it's over and anything like that. The regular season matters. Not saying it doesn't, but really, once you get into the playoffs, that's what we're really going to find out. Once the matchups are set and we know the health of the roster, that's going to tell us all we really need to know about people's chances. So it's early, but I think with sports media, the hype just grows too much. All this elite and all this, like, it's week 2. We shouldn't be saying anything before week 10. I get that's not good TV, but we should not be making all these declarations before week 10. We got to see what it looks like. Second headline, Zach Wilson. Everybody has been talking forever about Zach Wilson. Now, the Jets, I wouldn't even say they're a popular team, but it's a New York team. And when they got Aaron Rodgers, they became the team. Then Aaron Rodgers went down. Everybody want to talk about that. What are they going to do? Jets said, we're going with Zach Wilson. Everybody said, what are they going to do? They went with Zach Wilson, and it hasn't been great. Again, you behind a terrible offensive line, and you're with a defense that's not bad, but again, I said people were overrating. And it doesn't matter how good your defense is. When your offense is completely, doing nothing, the defense is going to break up at some point. So, a lot of conversations, again, because I guess Jets were the popular thing to talk about. And even though Aaron's down, they want to keep talking about it. So, it just blows my mind because it's one of the most simple stories in the league. You put all your chips in on Aaron Rodgers. What don't you understand? Like, that's what the owner bragged about, the GM, the head coach, the media, Hard Knocks, everybody bragged about going all in on Aaron Rodgers. So why are we shocked that when Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, it's over? Like, the part that I don't understand is why everyone's talking as if the Jets are going to resurrect this season. It's not happening. It's just not happening. Because it was going to be hard with Aaron Rodgers, and it's darn near impossible with Zach Wilson. And I'm not even saying Zach is, what everybody else is saying. That's a different conversation. But the fact is, he was not prepared to be that guy. They don't have the weapons around him to be that guy. And this whole system was catered to Aaron Rodgers. And, of course, the confidence of the team is gone. So I don't know why this continues to be a conversation. Like, how many times I hear Carson Wentz and Colin Kaepernick and all. Like, why are we talking about this? You said you went all in. We said you went all in. The fans said you went all in. And he got hurt. It's done. That's what it is. The season's done. All right. Another semi-headline, more so Devontae Adams, but also Justin Jefferson. There's some trade rumors. I find it interesting because Devontae we saw coming. A lot of people, especially if Jimmy G wasn't going to be healthy to start the season, it was like, look, the Raiders don't look good. How long will Devontae want to stay around this? If Aaron was healthy, I think 100% he would end up on the Jets, but that's not the case. So he made some noise saying that he don't want to wait around all year to get better. And I think he's just talking about more like we need to, pick it up now. I don't think he meant like put me on another team, but that's how people are taking it, and you can see that. That's a trade asset that the Raiders probably could use, and good players like that don't want to sit around and lose. And Justin Jefferson is the same way. Not every player is this way, but both of them tend to be the same way. Like, monster numbers, and you see them on the sideline pissed. Like, yes, they want their numbers, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, like, we're playing to win the game. You play to win the game. So the interesting part to me is, and I've said this during the running back conversation, wide receivers are the next up. Wide receivers and tight ends. I guarantee you. If not those two, it's going to be middle linebacker or off-ball linebackers. But more so receivers, tight ends. They're dime a dozen. They are dime a dozen. Now, running backs have a much more negative perception right now because everybody keeps talking about it's a passing league. It's not. The league is the same. I mean, it ain't the same, but the notion of the run game being gone is so overblown. Just look at last night with the Lions. But the difference is, like I said, you can find those guys in any round. If you got the surrounding cast, they're going to be productive, and we'll talk about that later. And receivers are the same way. So if you look at these top guys, Devontae Adams, we're talking about, he was a second round pick. Justin Jefferson, he was late first round pick. Tyreek Hill, we know he was a way later round pick. Stephon Diggs, like you go down the list of the top guys, not everybody's a first rounder or top 10. Like you can find receivers everywhere and tight ends as well, especially with the tight end class we just had now. Like if every team gets those guys together, Sam Laporta's ahead of everybody. Luke was on his way, and I think he'll still be good. If the Steelers could start working in Washington, Kincaid is on his way. Great tight end class. So you can get those guys. You don't have to be a top 10 pick to be great at those positions. And this is where it really hit home for me. I was thinking like, okay, where do I think Devontae Adams is going to go? Because obviously he wants to win. He don't want to go to another bad team. So that cuts out a lot of people who I'm sure will want him. But you look at the contenders, and guess what? If you say, would you rather have a receiver or some O-line help? Or would you rather have a receiver or some defensive help? There's no team that falls into the category where they don't need O-line help, don't need defensive help, and they need a receiver. Because the ones that are good in the O-line and the defense, they already got receivers. And the ones that might want a receiver, they much rather spend that money on someone that can block. So that tells you right there, just like the running backs, receivers are dime a dozen. Justin Jefferson's the same way. And I'm not saying the deal wouldn't get done, but it's just like what team. So I've seen like Dallas. Would Dallas like another receiver with CeeDee Lamb? Yes. But wouldn't Dallas much rather have another offensive lineman? Wouldn't Dallas much rather have another person in the secondary to replace Diggs? Like, so that shows me, not that they're not valuable, but they're a dime a dozen. They're not at the top of the food chain in terms of valuable positions like people talk about. And we'll get more into it later. But as quarterback, as everybody know, then it's offensive line. That's what it is. All right, so overrated. The Dolphins as champs. I'm not saying the offense is overrated. I firmly believe, because the thing is, people do not really realize that Mike McDaniel's system, much like San Fran, is in any of the Shanahans, really. Everybody thinks of it as a passing offense. They're rooted in the run game, especially Mike Daniels' style. And he was a run game coordinator with San Fran. It's rooted in the run game. So I hear people talk about the weather, bad weather, cold temperature going on the road. And if I'm not mistaken, Miami went into Buffalo and beat them in Buffalo. But still, people are wondering what can this offense do, because, all that speed will be kind of negated. And that's true, but this is rooted in the run game. I'm not worried about the offense. The thing people aren't talking about, because they're saying they're the number one team, they're the most scary, that defense is bad. Or it has played bad. And you don't have Jalen Ramsey. That's going to help. But again, you can have an elite corner. Don't make the rest of the defense great. So you look at the Dolphins, and they are at the bottom of the league in terms of giving up first downs and first down efficiency on defense. It is part of the stats that I track that I've talked about before. A lot of it has to do with first downs on both sides of the ball. And the Dolphins defense is one of the worst. Now, big part of that is you played the Chargers and they lit you up, but still, that just again shows your defense isn't ready. So, as far as champs go in the long run, they're going to have to figure out how to get that defensive unit to play better. I mean, even against the Broncos, people were like, "Oh man, they scored 70." Like the Broncos were doing well on offense. It was the fumbles, the turnovers that they forced to their credit. But as far as moving the ball, the Broncos were doing well. Like up until right before half, it was still a game. And yes, you can say if in the right conditions, which the Super Bowl should be, but that's a long way from now. In the right conditions, it's a track meet. You got to keep up with their offense. Yes, but every game's not going to be like that. As I've said before, a champion has to win in multiple ways. So I would say right now the Dolphins talk as champs is over. Anybody talk as champs is too premature. But I would say it's overrated now because people aren't really looking at how bad the defense. The defense ain't okay or mediocre. They have been performing really bad. And so we have to see kind of what that defense can be if they can tighten it up, especially if Ramsey comes back. All right, underrated. I got a number of things. Speaking of, Russ Wilson. The Broncos, people call dumpster fire, all that stuff. That's fine. I'm not arguing. But Russ Wilson isn't the issue. I'm not sure why he comes up. If you watch him, and I said last year, he might not be what he used to be, but he knows how to play football. What I felt watching the Broncos last year was this was a system, a whole offensive system that clearly did not know what it was doing. Sean Payton comes in, it's a lot more cohesive and everything. The defense is letting the Broncos down right now. Absolutely letting the Broncos down. And you could say, okay, well, hey, won't you be the Dolphins and score all those points? Yeah, I get it. They're not that great of an offense. But Russ is he's operating exactly how you want him to. He's making smart plays. He's maneuvering the pocket. He's accurate when he's able to throw it clean. He's doing the things that you expect from Russ Wilson. The offensive line's not great, but it's doing what it can. And the run game with Javonte is strong. But yeah, once you had those turnovers against a team that cashed in every single time, you got to start running the ball. You got to start passing. You got to come one-dimensional. Then you got people dropping. Then you got people fumbling. So Russ Wilson isn't the issue. I mean, people can look at Sean Payton. They can look at Vance Joseph. They can look at defense. Russ isn't the issue, and I think it's underrated on how much he's improved. Now, I'm not saying the Broncos are going to put it all together, especially how bad the defense is playing, but Russ is not the issue, and I think from a year of people dog walking this man, I think it's falling under the radar of how much better he looks this year. Next underrated thing, Lions offensive line. And this gets to my conversation from earlier. Offensive line is the new premium topic. It isn't mainstream yet, but trust me, that is going to be the discussion. When you look at the best teams, maybe outside of the Chiefs, that you feel have a chance, legit chance, it's the ones with the O-line. People like Dallas, even if you feel some type of way about their loss, they had 3 starters out on the O-line. And the Cardinals have been way better with pressure than people get them credit for. And so does that play a factor? Of course. But healthy, you really like that offensive line for the most part. If you look at Philly, they went to the Super Bowl. We know what that offensive line is. Best in football. The Lions, this ain't new with the offense. They have been, they were a top 3 offense last year in almost every category. And the big thing to me, when we're talking about the running backs and being replaceable, they switch out their running backs. They switch out Swift and Jamal Williams, bring in 2 new backs, brand new, and it's still humming on offense. That tells you a lot. Again, when you have the infrastructure, the O line mainly, the running backs don't. I wouldn't say they don't matter because I think Montgomery, Gibbs, they bring you some, but you could get those guys anyway. Now they got Gibbs in the first round. That was on them. They didn't have to, but you get Montgomery for free agent. The team he left didn't even put up an offer. Like, you can find guys that in the right system. Like Jamal Williams was one of the top. He had a record for touchdowns last year. And he goes to the Saints, he ain't doing much. Like, and they replaced that, and they still humming because that O line is great. Taylor Decker always been a solid like 85, above average, really good. And he's not spectacular, but he's physical. You bring in Penei Sewell, everybody considered a top 10 pick. They end up getting him, but they made that choice to take him when they could have took other stuff. And then, the rest of the line too. But they put the resources into this offensive line, and you look at the dividends it's paying. You're talking about Jared Goff thrown off to the side. First of all, he was called a bust his rookie year, which was crazy. And obviously the scheme and everything and the rest of the players matter, but the offensive line is where it starts. In the running game, I already talked about, you bring in 2 new guys, you keep it going. That offensive line keeps you in the game. The story about the Lions really is the defense. People forget they were like one of the worst defenses, like bottom 3 last year. And they'd be like, well, I hear some people talking like, wow, this Lions, offense really waking up. Like, no, like they were a top 3 offense last year. They just were a bottom 3 defense. And that's why they didn't go to the playoffs. And so we could talk about the defense, but I want to focus more on the O-line because that's been the constant, that's been the consistent. And again, as we look towards to the future, these defensive linemen have surpassed the O-line. They are absolute monsters. I'm talking 3rd round, 4th round picks, absolute athletically monsters. And I don't like to use that word, but they're superior athletes. And so having an offensive line becomes the big question into who's going to really compete. And not many people have a Pat Mahomes that, again, without no O-line, we saw what happened to him. But with a decent O-line, he can make it. He could overcome that by what he does. But most teams don't have that. And so you need an offensive line. And then the last underrated, Seahawks pass defense. Seahawks have a respectable record. They got a good chance to win this week. And I love the roster too. So it's easy to be like, yeah, that's a contender. Their pass defense is the worst in the league. Like, you might not think it, but they're the worst in the league right now. They give out the most first downs. They're the worst in efficiency. We saw what they did against the Rams, obviously against the Lions. And the problem is you have arguably the most impressive rookie corner from last year, Tyreek Woolen. You bring in the highest rated corner in the draft, and you add that to that secondary, and you have looked way worse. And a lot of it is because they don't have a pass rush, which is part of the pass defense. But there's been some miscues too in the secondary. And so there's a lot of talent and a lot of names on that defense, that pass defense, and especially in the secondary. But it has not paid dividends. And again, as I talk about the Dolphins, and not to say the Seahawks offense has been great, but that's where they got a lot of names too. And so if they put up points, that's cool. But at the end of the day, their defense is really going to come back to bite them, as it has a lot in these last few years. So I think there's a lot of other storylines that people are focusing on. But the Seattle's pass defense so far has been absolutely terrible. And so we'll see, because the Giants obviously not a prolific pass team. We'll see how they look now, if they can tighten it up. But that's one thing that I'm keeping my eye on. And then surprises. And it shouldn't be a surprise, but it is a surprise to me. The Chargers defense. The Chargers defense has underperformed the last 3 years. But you see the talent and the names on it, and you just think to yourself, there's no way this defense can keep being bad. And they do. They have been really bad. I mean, they're up there. They're up there or down there with the Dolphins and the Seahawks in terms of defense, especially pass defense. Well, more so with the Chargers' run defense, but the whole thing is bad. I mean, J.C. Jackson was a healthy scratch, and he might be traded. That's been bad since he's got there. We have not seen him be the player he was with the Patriots. But even outside of him, you got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Even if you didn't have Derwin James, you didn't have JC, you didn't have Eric Kendricks, you didn't have none of that. You got two prolific, supposedly edge rushers. And now me, I've been off the Khalil Mack train a long time, but people still believe he's up there. Bosa, I know he's injured a lot, but he's up there. We know how the Bosa boys get down, and so it's interesting to me, and I haven't studied them or nothing, but it's interesting to me that you could have that type of talent on the edge and still not get anything done. Not in the run, not in the pass, nothing. Pressure, nothing. And I think they do got some sacks, but still, it's just you look at these games and the defense has been completely letting the Chargers down. Completely letting the Chargers down. And so it's shocking. Now, a lot of people naturally go to the head coach. Hey, Brandon Staley, you're a defense coordinator. You're a quote unquote defensive minded head coach. I hate those terms. And so why does the defense look this bad? And that's a legit question. I'm not going to sit there, but that's not my first thought really. Because it has to be a lot deeper. It's always a lot deeper than that. But when you have a group of talent like this, is much deeper than just, hey, the head coach was a defense coordinator. This should be good. Like it's bigger than that. And I don't know actually if they change coaches. I would assume because they like to scapegoat people. But if it's been the same coach over these last 3 years, then yeah, that's probably an issue in terms of defensive staffing wise. But I assume they've changed coaches. I believe they have, and we still see these same results. So it's a big issue. I think I'm surprised at how bad. Like it's one thing to be middle of the pack, like I said before, but to be towards the bottom of the league, that is tough. That is very tough. And of course, again, same way as I said, the Dolphins played the Chargers. Chargers played the Dolphins. So those numbers inflated that first game, but again, that just shows you what was to come. That Dolphins defense continued on to give up numbers, and that Chargers defense continued on to give up numbers. So that's one of the surprises. That shouldn't be a surprise, but it is for me. So that's it for me. Those are my major things right now in the NFL as we go forward. Go down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Share around. Get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.